Mm. What do you mean by redefine yourself coloring book? Self-help books are very provocative. Um, they attempt to instruct in a very meaningful and an efficient way, but they are also, I mean, they have, the person writing the self-help book can very well be a very seasoned veteran and like extremely experienced, but books are made in self-help books tend to be books that have a very cohesive directional objective, I guess, in conveying ideas and whatnot, and it can be very provocative and sensational to people. So individuals, when they read, they can be swept up by self-help books, and generally speaking, if one is very vulnerable, right? If you ask yourself, are you very vulnerable or seeking a lot of help, not necessarily like mentally and whatnot, that desperation can create in a almost too zealous overzealous like behavior towards a singular self-help book. So reading many self-help books can help it like develop a better perspective on the self-help group of books. It's just something that can be a little bit it's good to keep in mind. Like they're very charming. Like self-help books are very charismatic. I don't know if you ever read a book and imagine the author that you're reading, the person. These self-help books, the author of them are likely, you can probably find online content of them like doing interviews and stuff. Yeah. So they can be very, very provocative, but you want to integrate that into the framework of your life that you have now. Instead, it's generally discouraged to try to shape your entire life around the self-help book. It's kind of like when you take on a diet, right? Hey, your favorite celebrity is on a keto diet, and you try to redefine your life around your celebrity and the diet plan, as opposed to extracting what you find useful and pragmatic to integrate into your own identity. In what's common with the example I talked about that I just used with dieting and self-help book is you have to remember that you are part of a target audience that tends to be attracted to these books. So what are the potential pitfalls of the audience? Well, the advice that I'm giving, or the advice that I'm just not really like trying to be realistic about, is that self-help books, when you hear other people talk about them, and when you hear about other people talk and live by self-help books, often it comes from an emotional loyalty, because self-help books attracts desperation, and that's not a bad or a good thing. It's just there are people looking for help, right? But they don't necessarily want to go other methods, and it's a great alternative. But just keep in mind that when you're reading, or the people who read self-help books can be in a vulnerable position, and you want to hold on to your identity, right? Just make sure you still remember what you're doing, what makes you happy, like what makes you efficient and whatnot. So while you're reading that, you're primarily extracting the information in the perspective of yourself. Not drop everything and, hey, do these three steps and you'll be like me, or you'll be like the person in the book. That's more or less what I'm leaning towards. I still need to find out what those time, you know. I have no idea how I'm gonna get another CD from this. Maybe? Is 334? 334 combo? I feel like I'm gonna have to use a mod or something and seed the mod with like something I can play. We're only focusing on combo, so combo game, here we go. There's only one problematic area here. If we hit it, then we got the combo. If we don't, then rip. It's really late into the song too. Oh wait. I broke by hitting Sugar Rush. Dang it. That works. I could Sugar Rush that section. It's just a steady alternating thing. But I didn't want to risk it, but it hit Sugar Rush. I let one note through, unfortunately. You won't believe it. You want to guess my #1 issue with self-help books? Your #1 issue with self-help books. No, I don't have enough context or information. What is it? I don't have enough information to accurately know. Not putting it into practice. Does the self-help book ask you to put it into practice? I'm not entirely sure if I properly have read a self-help book. The stuff that I'm saying are very anecdotal from like other people. But does it ever offer instructions on how to put it into practice? Is it actualizing the information? So, give you an example. I got an example. Like, you know, the For Dummies series of books? Like Internet for Dummies or audio for dummies, it comes off as more of an instruction manual, like a manual that gives you procedural steps to perform and then modify and then iterate further. Is that how self-help, like the self-help book that you're reading is being written like when you're reading it? Does it come off as that? They come with instructions? I see. Then I would definitely agree that checks out. I have no qualms with believing that one of your major issues with self-help book is probably putting it into practice. um the reason why I say I'm not quite sure if I've read a self-help book is I can't see a book not helping the self. I guess I'll let you think about that for a moment, what I mean. I don't know if you want me to explain that further, but I can't see reading a book not being helpful in some way. Like, you can derive help and inspiration as long as you're actively looking for something when you're reading a book. Unfortunately, sometimes we just want to have a good time, right? And I understand. Look, like, reduce the effort, cruise along. This is exactly what the book says. So, I may or may not have thought about writing some of this stuff, but generally speaking, I here's me. Here, I'll give you an example of me running away from responsibilities. All right. So I use the diffusion of responsibility. It's literally called the diffusion of responsibility. I tend to have an imposter syndrome, right? Where I do feel like I could write something that is relatively receptive and coincides with many popular theorists and practitioners and whatnot, right? I could publish something like that. However, I tell myself that if I can come up with such ideas and help in my own way, unintentionally, then there's got to be someone out there who have dedicated formally and professionally to it, and that would be the model that I would use to defer people. So generally speaking, that if I had to be really honest, if like I was talking to maybe a therapist or something, that could be seen as a diffusion of responsibility. As in, I am excusing myself from pursuing or being proactive because I rationalize that there are other people better at it, and I'm reasonably accepting of that. It's a little different story than what you hear when you're playing games and video games like this, where you would say, why bother practicing? I'll just go watch someone who's better than me. There's got to be someone who's better, right? That's the more dangerous type of self-defeating and self-deprecating type of personality. For me, what I'm saying is, I know this material. It's going to sound like other people's material, but the nice part about living in the world we live today is that there's someone who's doing it better, and that someone I can learn from, and so can everyone else. So each day is an adventure to find someone who's better at something than me, because that's an opportunity to extract all their hard-earned time, and I benefit from it. Like, that's like the story of my life in general. And that's what I mean by self-help as well. Movies are self-help. Anything you really do is self-help as long as it's active, because you can seek something from someone. So whenever you're reading a book, you can tell yourself, hey, you did not spend hundreds of hours making this book, but this person did. So they saved you the time to come up with this material that they spent so long curating. So now here's your opportunity to extract as much value out of their product that they spent years of their life cultivating, and you don't have to. That's how it works. So like it, and then what happens in general, in my opinion, when you have a perspective like that, which is like myself, right, is that you no longer compare yourself to someone else. You only compare yourself to yourself on how you can extract other people's experiences, who technically, by comparison, could be better than yours, but how you can extract their efforts to make you better than your previous self before you tackled the task. So with that perspective, when we have conversations, when I pick up a book, when I watch a movie, I'm doing that. I'm actively extracting what I could use. So a lot of times when you said like, this is exactly what the book says, I took that from somewhere. It came from somewhere. Unfortunately, I don't know where it came from, but it probably came from some author in an interview that was offering some self-help. It was somewhere. The downside of how I'm remembering things is I'm pretty poor at remembering strict details. I tend to rely on other people to find the strict details because the internet is present. So I don't extract, I don't encode strict details. Like you can, that's something that's mechanical. And I'm not saying it's inferior to how I'm doing it. It's just, it's a different type of operation. Remembering specific semantic knowledge, like I make an effort and try, but it is secondary to the idea and the wisdom that is involved in it. So if I had to choose, if I can't remember someone's name, I choose to remember what they gave to the community. So like if an author, if I read a book, I choose to understand the book over remembering the author's name. I know that I'm going to try to remember both, but I think to me, it's a personal respect to at least prioritize understanding the product that this person has made, and then I can mechanically look for the person's name because it will provide enough details to look it up. And that's just pretty much everything I do most of the time. You're like a living example of a person who's done everything in the book. I don't think it's a coincidence, Joshing. I really don't think it's a coincidence. And I want to say that earlier I said don't try to shape your life around these things, like as a fair warning. However, it's not a coincidence. Yeah, it's not a coincidence. I'm gonna lean into that. But with that said, if you're not in line with the majority, which I don't think it's a coincidence, it's actually a really strong statistical corollary between the practices of individuals who are productive and successful and relatively stress managed and balanced. To make it sound like it's very provocative can mislead individuals to not find balances that work for them. So what I'm saying is, it can start to sound like it's a one size fits all kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah, there's no the off chance it doesn't work for me, like, oh, my life is over. That's exactly it. Because if you're in a desperate situation and you are very down and you're looking for alternatives to try to make yourself feel better, make yourself happier with your life, I'm not going to use those words. Like, I hope the book is not using these words, like, make yourself feel more successful. That's just tangential. It's superficial. Make yourself overall feel happy about your actions and your productivity, your own opinion about yourself. That's the goal, right? And having a one size fits all just because it's very statistically correlated, right? Not just mere coincidence. When you're really desperate, it could mean the world ends. Like, oh, I don't do any of this. It's like, if I have to be honest with myself, I can't do any of this. Am I screwed? So that's kind of the really negative side of thinking, reading a self-help book with the mindset of, these are the answers. These are the answers that will help me turn my life around. And in a desperate situation, in an emotionally vulnerable state, you can go into a book, go into something like that, expecting that outcome. And it could be even more devastating when you discover you don't meet these requirements or you don't naturally do these things. So you read more. In my opinion, the more exposed you are, the better. But if I had to tell you the truth, I would tell you that your one self-help book, this might sound a little bit diminishing to people who write these books, but they overlap a lot. Their personal anecdotes and like approaches may vary a bit in like the style, like the flavor of the approach, but overall, once you get a, like, after you're done reading this book, if you read two more, they overlap a lot. Substantially, fundamentally, if you deconstruct them to their core foundations, I would say at least 70 to 80% of it overlaps. Pragmatically speaking, they will overlap. However, that 20% makes the biggest difference. Why, in my opinion, I'm just like ballparking, like the 20% is the personality of the person's writer. So the background of the person. So why, someone could ask pragmatically, why read other self-help books then? Well, emotional empathy, like your empathy with the author, like the other 20% flavor, could motivate you. It could emotionally push you over an emotional barrier that enables you to do something. So if this self-help book, why read other self-help books, right? Exactly, is probably what a pragmatist would challenge. When you read, it's like, you're not quite resonating with this person's examples or anecdotes or the way the language feels. That's an incentive to read a different self-help book. The principles, it'll grind into your brain. You'll start collecting all the overlapping principles. Like if you drew a Venn diagram, there's a huge blob in the middle. It's like 80% overlap. But what you're really looking for now, intently, in my opinion, when you're reading a self-help book, is ask yourself, is the author like you? Like, do you resonate with the author? If you resonate with the author, perhaps some interviews can reinvigorate. It can elevate emotionally the value of those words. And that's priceless. That's like the GOAT, in my opinion. Like, if you're reading self-help books to be pragmatic, like you're saying, man, I'm down on my... What can I do pragmatically to scientifically improve my performance? Well, all those self-help books, they're all relatively the same. But that's not enough, in my opinion. Viewing it pragmatically, you have to understand that if you're reading a self-help book now, you're emotionally unstable. You're emotionally vulnerable. And you're looking for an emotional bolster. And it's going to feel... It feels like it's a little easier to be done if the book you're reading is it's elevating your emotional state. Which tends to be like how well you resonate with the author. But I missed a few things though. Let me see. So you freeload on other people's expertise. I do. It's free for the taking. Public domain. They share it. I digest it. You know, all for the sake of what? Self-improvement. I want to say it's self-improvement, but I can't differentiate the difference between self-improvement and living. I think if I had to ask myself why I tend to extract as much information as I can from people, is it offers me the opportunity to help someone else. And that helps me build legacy. The most rewarding thing in my life, in my current age, is to build legacy. And the legacy is to use my abilities and aptitude to leave a lasting impression on individuals. It doesn't have to be like millions of people. I mean, like, I'm not thirsty for fandom or you know, that kind of thing. Just one person is sufficient, right? But that's what legacy is. And well, I'm obviously not in a relationship or starting a family at the very moment, so that's also legacy building, but I don't have access to that. So naturally, helping, instructing, educating, that leaves legacy too. It makes me feel alive. Self-improvement, maybe not so much, but it's coupled. So I do not habitually compartmentalize self-improvement, mental health, physical health, probably, mental and physical health, and legacy building. So those things are so coupled that I don't distinguish them being mutually separated anymore. So like, if I'm going to bed, right, it's not a waste of time. It's constructively helping me rest to do my task better. Like, you know, instead of compartmentalizing, which tends to happen a lot to help individuals who compartmentalize these kind of things, tend to want to stay focused on a reductive way of looking at their lives to keep it from overwhelming them. So if you're an individual that tends to be very overwhelmed with responsibility or a constant reminder of, you focus down, you focus on very specific aspects, and then that bleeds into all your mindsets as well. So how you improve yourself, how you derive pleasure, how you criticize yourself, it becomes very compartmentalized, very, very specific details. And that can save you, but it can also close you off. And for me, I'm like on the other end now. Like, in fact, sometimes it's very difficult for me to focus. So I am aware that I lose focus quite a bit. It's a trade-off. I practice one over the other quite substantially more. So it's fairly obvious that I would lack a lot more focus if I was comparing myself to another self that decided to behave differently. It's not about them being better, it's about you trying to extract something to make yourself. Yeah. In the end of the day, that is one of the things. I don't think okay, so let me get caught up. The book isn't giving me the answers, it's only giving me the questions I need to ask myself. That's very efficient. I like that. I like that approach. If I think back to this and the last two books I read, fundamentally it's about living with intention. Yes. I would have to say I have probably most of our conversations involve living with intention. You can just hammer the similar stuff into your head until it clicks. Possibly hammer the head, I guess. I need to search self-help authors until I find. I can't tell the difference between self-improvement and living. Yeah, you really don't. If you want to, for me, right? For me, to live is synonymous with self-improvement. Feeling alive also means improving over time. Like they're and it's very like when I get up to breathe, I'm still alive. It's an opportunity for improvement. It's an opportunity to gain new experiences. So generally speaking, every breath I take feels like a natural progression towards self-improvement. Obviously, I'm not saying that getting older means you're becoming more physically fit, right? So I realistically understand the bounds of biology, being a biologist myself. Yeah, I would say that if you were gonna do it like top down, if you were gonna take a top down approach to reading self-help books, finding an attractive author, like what I mean by an attractive author is an author that has a background story that resonates with you, that elevates a product emotionally beyond its pragmatic values. It creates investment. So, for example, if you had a friend, right, it's the same like going to a concert. You know the person playing. If you're going to a concert and you know that person playing, it doesn't matter pragmatically if that person. It matters less. Sorry, it still matters. It's just it becomes secondary to your emotional investment of knowing the person on stage. You you can still be rational enough to know that yeah, your friend isn't like the best, but gosh darn it, you know that person. So all this is utilizing your emotions proactively. I don't know if that's in your self-help book or not, but understanding yourself and your motivations, you can use that. That like one of the strongest sources of motivation is your emotions. So if you intentionally and in purposefully place yourself in situations that you are aware will aid you in your own personal motivations by utilizing your emotions, it's a lot of extra motivation. Like individuals who get angry when they fail but know that it's the process of their most efficient way of self-improvement, they would continue to do that. And naturally, right? Naturally, if you think about it, a positive association in the end with a negative behavior, it still gets reinforced too. Ideally, a positive meets a positive tends to work out a little bit better, like a positive motivational source leading to a positive outcome is a little bit more consistent and maybe sustainable. However, even negative behaviors that are associated with positive outcomes get reinforced. Like, great example, challenging games. I'm still staring at this level that I'm probably not going to combo today. But if there's a great example about the current trend of video games, is that people love to hate to challenge them for self-improvement. I obviously don't agree, but it is one of the ways. I can engage in it, so I can do the same. But it's not the only way to self-improve. Like, not even close. There are so many more methods to optimize, like to use, and you can switch it up. You're not reliant. You're not reliant on a singular method when you diversify. About trying to improve and enjoying it rather than achieving. Yes. Honestly, that's encouraged. Depending on your mindset. Depending on your mindset, again, this is, you have to ask yourself what your motivations are. Like, I do like achievements and whatnot and achieving things. They're not compartmentalized for me. Improving and achieving something is a natural outcome. For me, it's a natural outcome of self-improvement. So whether it's there or not, it's not dependent. Self-improvement comes first. So if I achieve something in the process, that's great. That's extra. I think there's a fundamental one hot take. I'll give a hot take here. Here's a hot take. And I don't know any self-help book done this yet. Take out a piece of paper, or like unfold a mental piece of paper in your head. If you don't want to pick up a pencil and start writing, that's fine. Or put up a word processor or type to yourself. Make a list of what has to happen for you to feel like you're rewarded. Okay? All right? Make a list, and you have to be honest. You have to be as detailed as possible, right? That sounds like a lot of effort, but this is a bottom top approach, okay? Sort of. Bottom up approach. Write as many things that is necessary that makes you feel happy or rewarded. Any you can narrow down or something. All right. One goal that makes someone very consistently happy is that when you write that list, you can see a pattern to form. There are various characteristics. How long the list is, how short the list is. I'm not entirely sure if these are accurate or not, but a long list means it means that you're extremely demanding, right? Demanding, so a lot of things have to happen. However, you can also view it as a lot of opportunities to find different sources of reward. If you have a short list, it will tell you that you probably need to expand the list. However, that short list, that very one thing, will help you focus on how to diversify from that one thing. And then there's specifics and general. If most of your things feel like it's very general, and you know, let's say similar list length, right? Same similar length thing. We're not going to talk about like short general or long general. Maybe that's a lot of permutation. But say similar list size, but if one is very specific, then your goal is to generalize. Like, this is for someone who's like possibly unhappy at the moment, right? You're trying to create changes. So when you have very specific rewarded aspects, try to generalize all those reward sources. And then when you have, if it's awfully specific, awfully general, try to specify it, try to narrow it down, and then use those as way to make yourself dynamic, right? You're trying to encourage yourself to use a framework you already understand, and you're trying to deviate slowly away from it just to produce some consistency. Generally, this don't really work very well. There is a disclaimer. If you think you're a very healthy individual, you wouldn't, to me, if I had to guess, there wouldn't be very startling patterns. Like, you wouldn't, when you look at your list, it's not quite you wouldn't feel like it's quite short or quite long, and you wouldn't feel like anything is awfully specific or general. That just means that you have an incredible birth, like a range of sources of feeling reward and self-satisfaction. If you feel like it's awfully at an extreme end, generally speaking, super selective, so short, super indecisive, very, very long, and then special specifics go with shortness, and general go with long, typically. And that's when you want to normalize it a little bit. Like, if you're too specific, go towards general. If you're too general, go towards specific. It'll change an environment. It'll change your mindset a little. It'll make it more like a game. Like, it'll give you a task to try to do. And that's as specific as I can get. It sounds very general, but that's just how in my opinion, that's how self-help is in general. Because you would really, really need to go see a therapist who has intimate, personal information about a person to be any more specific about these things. Or a really close friend. And obviously we are not, we do not know that, we do not have that level. So it sounds very general and very nebulous because that's generally the nature of it when you have no personal information. Me deflecting every single self-help exercise and complaining about not practicing when I learn, so I'm supposed to be writing a list. I'm so into this I can't even write the list. You gotta be more specific then. And since you're asking me questions like activities or goals, the thing is you're trying to lower the barrier to, like, I know you just said you can't write the list, but the idea is to lower the barrier to write the list. Often just writing something in general gives you intent. You have to tell yourself to intently write something. I think self-help, number one, the biggest probably core to every self-help book is what you already said earlier. Active participation in life. I know most people would say with intention, but active participation is the phrase that I've used most often. Actively do something. It doesn't mean you can't just passively enjoy things. If you're healthy and happy and like balanced already, you can do whatever you want. Whatever you're doing now is fine, like passively, actively. But if you're in a place that's spiraling and like declining, you have to become active in order to make an intentional change. It could get worse, so it'd be super safe. Generally prepare yourself to potentially get worse before getting better. It can happen. Or things you try can make you feel worse. So I that's not a great way to sell a self-help book. But it's worth mentioning that realistically there will be ups and downs when applying changes to your life. I'm not sure if authors give you give a disclaimer. Oh, it does say that? Okay. Fair enough. Good. I'm glad all this stuff overlaps with everyone. Again, maybe that's interesting. I might read as an interesting social experiment. I could read the self-help book that you're reading. I could see what it's like. I honestly haven't ever picked up a specific self-help book before. Because education in general is self-helping. Instruct is unclear. Can you? Yeah. Anyways, that's a good digression. Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. Interesting. Think Like a. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Oh my gosh, is this the guy that talks about monk mode? Like, is the phrase monk mode in this book? There are several people in the self-help sphere that popularized a term called monk mode. And I'm not saying the author itself is perpetuating it, but there's a lot of influencers who have now called it a monk mode. It says monkey mine and monk mine, but not monk mode. Okay. Monkey mine? You mean like monk-like mine? Did you just call it? Did you just... Listen, Josh. Monkey is a thing. Okay, no. I know what is the untrained mind. Oh, I see. If you're curious of what I mean, YouTube, and then type in monk mode, and they probably read that book or like various books that dealt with the monk lifestyle. Yeah, no, it's sensationalism, Joshing. What was a good example? Yeah, it is sage mode. And no. You're still, it's still fine. The point is still being made. I mean, a sage is very much a secluded person that is wise. So like, you know, a hermit, sage, monk. We get the gist, you know. It's a thing. It's a thing, Joshing. So if you're curious, I'm pretty sure most of the influencers are collectively using the same terminology, but making it a little bit more exciting. Like engage monk mode. It's a little cringe to me, like personally, if I had to. But I've said cringe things, right? So like or like cringe as in like awfully verbose or something. Like for me, living with intent, often that is too nebulous. It's like really that's not descriptive enough. So I usually use the word active participation, the phrase active participation, or procedural mindset. A procedural mindset is extremely healthy, and it's basically one and the same of active participation. So for example, telling yourself to read one chapter each day, and then telling me a 1-sentence summary of what that chapter said can be described in 2 or 3 steps. You could go even further and say, all right, how do I do that? A chapter is figure out how long. Step 1, figure out how long the average chapter is in your book. How many, and then 2, how many average main ideas you can have. So your first step is to use chapter 1 as an example, right? Then the second step, write the various main ideas. Next step would be to reduce it, like integrate the main ideas to half the ideas. So like combine the ideas. And then the last step would be to pick your favorite idea that resonates most. And then your last step would be to tell me. Those are all procedural. That's a procedural intent. Like, that creates intent. Just the procedural mindset. And then when you do it, you're actively participating. You have challenged yourself to minimally do a task that is not asked of anyone. But if you did not remember anything, you read whatever you did, right? At least you're going to complete a task. And completing that task actively, and always keeping that in mind, and obligating yourself to someone. It doesn't have to be me. I was just making an example. To something, or maybe even a journal, or like needing to write it down. That creates active participation. That's what living with intent is. Like, and it's a little bit different from hoping something happens. Okay, so you're not hoping for something happens. You're doing the thing. That's so. For example, in this game today, right? I got on. I'm hoping to improve. But my task that I'm telling myself is I must play a specific minimum number of time and complete a specific number of tasks I've already assigned to myself. The hope is still there for sure, but that is a passive thing that you do. You hope something happens to you without understanding why it happens to you or how it happens to you. So when you're watching Osu streamer, when they get on Osu and they're practicing, they're constantly saying, my goal is I hope I get a play. That is passive participation. Like you might be thinking, but they're actively practicing and stuff. It's like they're passively practicing. They're passively practicing in a hope that somehow they get a play. They're not actualizing it. Like, how does this practice lead to a play? It just does. Like, well, then you won't remember any of it. Like, you would generally, it will just fly by. You'll spend 10 days practicing and say, hey, I got a score. All right, off to the next score. Can you reproduce it? You can't. You decided not to compartmentalize. You decide not to take observations. You did not even inherently ask yourself what you were doing. You've recorded absolutely nothing, both physically and in your head, probably. So you're expecting to be able to reproduce this? You probably can. I kid you not. That's how most people, like, what I mean is healthy individuals can do it. Like, healthy individuals. But if you're not healthy, right? If you're not healthy with this lifestyle, that type of passive thing, you're not going to end up, it's not self-sufficient. Because you can't reproduce it consistently. If you're already on the downhill, it means you're not getting enough healthy, positive stimuli with your behavior. So constantly repeating the same thing isn't going to get you an improvement. Healthy just means unsustainable. So I get on with intent. Absolute intent. Like this right now, if you think that me pausing here and not playing this game, this happens a lot where when someone says like, oh, you know, thanks for taking out your time to play games, like that was not even my intent. Like, this is the meta of the meta. Like, this is the meta game of my meta game. I am playing a game with the intent of having the option to engage in a discussion. That task already supersedes why I'm on Twitch streaming a game already. You might be saying, well, that sounds kind of familiar. That sounds like those kids who get on stream and say like, oh, it's fun, you know, it doesn't matter if no one interacts with me, but I just want to share my experience with people and, you know, hope to chat it up. It feels great. It's like, that's passive. They didn't describe what they're going to do when they engage to a person. They didn't think like why they want to engage with a person. What are they getting from the person? What are they offering to the person? There's no activeness in it. They're just hoping it will happen. So when you get online, when you get on stream, all the stuff I'm saying right now in this very discussion, I have already prepared over like so many years. So I'm not saying like, have anxiety, blanking stare, make some funny noises, say something non-constructive. No, I'm doing those deliberately because I have already rehearsed this. It's happened already. So I can pause, gather the ideas, everything's rehearsed. And you'll probably know when I'm improvising, because if you're kind of like me where you rehearse everything and start planning everything out, there are other skills that become underdeveloped, and that's improvisation. Things like pretending to know something you don't. I can't do stuff like that. Like bluffing. Bluffing is an underdeveloped skill. I'm very terrible at bluffing because the nature of what I do does not inherently make me a frequent bluffer. And that goes with joking too, because joking involves a bit of a bluff. Very close. I'm not distracting you from the game. Joke's on me. I'm the one who's furthering your goal. Yeah, that's more or less it. I rehearse things and then proceed to win. Well, here's the thing, right? Have you tried not rehearsing something and winging it and comparing it? So give yourself a task, right? Rehearse something, wing it, and then don't rehearse something and wing it. And ask yourself if you overall feel better or worse than not doing. You might have an associated pattern where you might think, oh, rehearsing didn't mean anything to you, but it's hard to know if you haven't compared it yet. So it would be an interesting question. Rehearse something, wing it, then don't rehearse something, wing it, compare, and you might, here are some outcomes. Here are some outcomes that you might find. Turns out when you wing it, it's pretty, it's pretty based. Like it somehow is better, even though it feels like you didn't remember anything you rehearsed, right? But what you can learn from that is, hey, you're going to rehearse it anyways, and you already know you're going to wing it, but at least you have reason to believe that rehearsing it offers something productive. Otherwise, pragmatically speaking, if you're going to wing it anyways, why rehearse it, right? You can replace it with a different process so that you can optimize your time for it. Rehearsing is just a method for me to bring my mindset to the right place for that so I can wing it effectively. It could be. You don't know. Well, like, I don't know. I'm not sure if you know enough. You have to actively, active participation. There's also an extension of active participation. And that's intent. That's not the word. Deliberate rehearsal. I use the word rehearse a lot, but deliberate rehearsal. It's more like a review. So from time to time, I would review things. I would just grab something and review it. Fundamentals, bottom up approach. Like, I don't know, once a month I would ask myself, I do this all the time. Should I change it? Like, okay, well, let's go over what I do for the last month and then reevaluate. That's a better word. I like the word reevaluate better. Periodic reevaluation. I don't, if I had to be bold, rarely do people who are narcissistic, who are very comfortable with their skill set, exercise periodic reevaluation of themselves. It's not a bad or a good thing. Depending, there's some jobs out there and some situations that work really well avoiding this. But what periodic reevaluation helps with is to review and remind yourself where you started. So what I mean is, as you become, like, say your skill level's here, and then one day you're just gonna clock really high. The longer you spend further away from where you started, the less you're gonna be able to evaluate yourself from where you started. So if you spend all your time, your mindset up here, and you don't ever reevaluate, as in remind yourself constantly where you started, your range is gonna shrink. What I mean is your perception of yourself is gonna shrink. What happens is you become less tolerable, and to yourself and to everyone else, and you're gonna lose empathy to anyone who's not within your range. So when you become a specialist, your tolerance would be like so minor. So to the point where if you are having struggles starting something new, right? A new skill, start over, grab another notebook, start a new project, you are creating that situation with yourself. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is, it's for better or for worse, or however, or indifferent. Periodic reevaluation helps ground you more. It's some a lot of times this periodic evaluation, the thing that I'm talking about tends to be in the context of bullying and tolerance, or intolerance rather. So when, like, an expert of anything, like backflips, a backflip expert, and sees an amateur trying to do backflips, the reaction and body language and, like, response of that specialist can really reveal how often they periodically reevaluate themselves. And it may be healthy and sustainable if you're really, really lucky, like a person that, I don't know, doesn't age and peaks forever, or they happen to have a job or skill that just doesn't depreciate over time. I'm gonna be honest. I would encourage people to win the lottery than live like that. Like if you really want a behavioral, if someone is encouraging you to have that type of behavioral aspect, dude, just buy a lottery ticket and know that you will win. That's what you're doing, in my opinion. Like, pragmatically speaking, statistically and all that, if you have that type of mindset, I hope you're a lottery winner and you can continue to stay happy. The last thing I want to do, in my opinion, is hope those people are miserable. Like, what I mean is, they're going to end up eventually non-sustainably miserable, and I don't want them to be miserable to say I told you so. But statistically, you have to remain grounded. It's very highly encouraged. So a lot of times, reevaluation. So every month, actually, I do this every year. Like December, at the end, I reflect. I reflect on my year. Like, actually, I do this at the end of, like, every 3 months, where I reevaluate, ground myself, and just continue on. And there are, I guess there are benefits. I'm not sure if I'm gonna call these benefits, or we're not. There are things that happen with this. There are behaviors that you get. You don't regularly overestimate yourself or underestimate yourself, right? You are less likely. Well, okay, so human condition. Typically, the desired effect leads to an overcompensation. So, I think that's the phrasing. So, for example, if you are going to do something that you have practice, there is a tendency to overestimate. When you do something that you are not practiced in, there's going to be a tendency to underestimate. That range of overestimating and underestimating becomes a bit more accurate as you continue to self-reflect periodically. So it doesn't end up putting you in a position habitually, like you don't even have to think about it in general. It will just happen naturally as a process of reevaluating yourself all the time. You won't engage, you won't overreach as frequently, like crazy overreach. That's usually what happens. People overreach and they become overwhelmed. Things start cascading. That's the worst case scenario, by the way. It doesn't have to happen in that order, and it's not guaranteed to happen in that order. Generally, when something starts falling apart, there's resistance, and then people fix. Like, it doesn't start crumbling all the time. And then when you underestimate, you sell yourself short. Now, what you have shared with me lately, Josh, is more this end, where your bottom line is so low that you have not overcome the understanding that you can probably do a lot of things, but you have underestimated yourself, grossly underestimated yourself. It's both. It's both. It's a combination of both, but I think there's a driver in here. You have a vast underestimation of effort. And I don't know what you're more receptive to, but one thing I can tell you is that you're not underestimating yourself. In my opinion, you're not underestimating yourself based on how committed you are, like how much effort you can put forth. You are underestimating how difficult a situation is, the situation you are in as well. So that might be a silver lining. It might be a formal challenge, but you are in a situation that's far harder than getting better at Osu. Like, for example, like Osu is trivial compared to, like, so it's a double whammy. You have an underestimation of your capacity, in my opinion. Just take this lightly. I don't want to sound too, like, fatalist. You're underestimating how much effort you can muster, but you are also underestimating how difficult it is, how much effort it takes to get out of a situation you are in, like in the mental loop or situation you are in. So one is kind of a good thing if you look at a silver lining. One's like a silver lining, but the other one is like an underappreciation. It's when someone starts reading self-help books, they start looking to diet, looking desperately for like physical health and trying to find mental state. That's a really big pit. Like, generally speaking, a big pit would be someone having an off day and felt crummy for 2 months. It sounds like you've been crummy for years. That's a really, really deep pit. So you're grossly underestimating how difficult of a situation you're in. that make you sound like, some people might make it sound like, oh yeah, I'm up for the challenge then. Like it might not help, right? So for your case, in my opinion, how much I know about you from sharing, which isn't very much, so keep that in mind. Hearing that makes, it's probably going to discourage you more, but at least you can be aware of it. That's usually my go-to. I prefer saying it and then letting the person choose, but often there's a double edge. When someone doesn't want to hear it, sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? Like if you don't tell them how much of an uphill battle they have, they can continue to focus on improvement. Others, you know, a great archetype would be, I tell them like, hey, you know, this is really hard. And say, oh yeah? Oh, so it's not easy. It's really hard. Now I'm excited. Like I want to beat the odds, right? Someone like Sun would be a great example. If you tell him like, you can't do this, it's just not, it's just overwhelming, he would step up. So, but your personality strikes me as something like probably some positive motivation, a little balance between not dire and encouraging. But I do have to say the stuff that you're sharing, it's a really deep pit. Like someone can have a bad day, but they don't usually have bad years. They can have bad weeks, maybe even a bad month. And often it's something inflicted upon them. Your thing that you're looking for is self-inflicted. And you might think it's reasonable. I will say I agree with you that people rejecting you for a job, for example, right? People rejecting you for a job, that's kind of on them too. Yes, agreed. But I don't think they're the biggest critic. I think you're your worst critic. So, there's no amount of things like me or my friends who've gone through like jobs and stuff can tell you like no matter how much we're gonna tell you saying like it's a job, you get rejected from a lot, you get accepted to a few, and that's the natural order of things. But it doesn't it's being insensitive to how harshly you take rejection. So if there's any silver lining to this, is being aware that you take rejection very, very heavily, maybe overestimatingly heavily. You could try to find diversify skills that can help blunt that devastation. Like it's I'm not, you have to have a professional tell you that though. Like in my tangential amateurish way, I would say one of the leading sources that you have shared with me, the thing that you're willing to share that's repeatable, is the extraordinary extent of negative feelings you have associated with the interpretation of your failure. So like when you fail something, it is so much more dramatic and a source of negativity than hundreds of people that I have talked to over the years. So if that can help you understand that your shortcomings and stuff is not unique, but it's unique in your head, that's the closest thing I can get. Like, you are making your failures. Like, to me, this is like gaslighting and it's victim blaming. So you want to be careful. I'm not trying to blame you or uh or being it can be interpreted this way, where your failures are really detrimental somehow. You're in a mindset that you cannot tolerate this. You can't hold on to this. You can't overcome these things. They're just piling up. And the stuff you're describing, right? The stuff you're describing statistically happens, that feeling happens to me, to so many people on a daily basis. But for us, or for the other people, we found ways to tolerate, to renegotiate how we feel about it. But yours is just piling up. It's not like fading, like it just gets bigger and bigger. And I don't think there's one time that we've ever had a conversation where you didn't kind of sell yourself short, like immediately, as a joke, you know, self-deprecation. I get it, humor is great, but there's this like really nuance between a comedian who knows they're intentionally self-deprecating, and then there is someone who's self-deprecating to really actually project. So you're projecting, in my opinion, you're projecting your dissatisfaction with yourself. You're not intentionally using humor to show how secure you are. So when I take a joke and when I try to joke, I guess, well, like this, like when I'm saying, when I try to joke, I'm using it as a way to show vulnerability intentionally, because I know it to be true or accurate, but I'm not projecting my dissatisfaction. I'm not dissatisfied that I'm terrible at jokes. While on the other hand, it sounds like you are. Like, it feels that way. So when you joke about something, no, it's actually, it sounds pretty bad. It sounds like you're upset. It's like, you can feel it. I can read that, how consistent it is. An individual who is using self-deprecating humor typically use it in a way that doesn't hurt themselves or constantly remind themselves. So it's almost to the point where every joke you make is constantly bringing back the same terrible feelings that you have. And now you've done it so long. This is overreaching. I'm overreaching now, but now you've done it so long, you don't have other coping mechanism. Like, this coping mechanism is so passive, so habitual, that it is effortless to do this, right? It takes effort to make more coping mechanisms, or to gain more coping mechanisms. So you have constantly now relied on a coping mechanism that's probably making you feel worse, if I had to be bold. Just some, these are just things to think about. These are things you could think about to look for an answer in your self-help book. Like, Josh, like, what I just said, if anything is interesting, the challenge here is go find an answer in your self-help book. Address some of it. Like, try to find in your self-help book how you can create humor that prevents you from projecting onto yourself. Like, just like projecting from your negative feelings. Maybe the self-help book has something. If it doesn't, okay, here's the thing. When you're living intently and you're actively doing something, the task you are doing can be completed. It doesn't have to yield a result. Okay? So that is that's a minor, some people might think that's a minor difference, but it makes all the difference. You're tasking yourself to do a task. irregardless of the result. So the challenge that you could take up the challenge that I just said haphazardly. I'm not suggesting you should, or should not. If you do, you're looking to see if it does or doesn't. So like if your self-help book doesn't have an answer, it's not a failure. You completed the task. It's just you now know this person doesn't focus on this topic. You could even expand that. It's like, okay, well, I didn't find a way about humor as a projection of self. Why is that? Why does this author not do that? Okay, well, let's go and look for an author that does. Those are all active things, like that come from a single active thing, right? So when you become active, you'll ask yourself more questions and it'll keep you busy. It'll make you very rewarding, and it gives you a purpose. Purposeful, intent tends to come with purpose. So purposeful participation. You get up, like, heck, some days to me, I don't think this is a great thing, but to me, I feel like you can also be too purposeful. Not that I'm saying moderation, right? Sometimes you can lose sleep if you're too purposeful, but it doesn't seem like that's your case here. But just challenge yourself to do something. Not like, it doesn't have to be challenging. Okay. It doesn't have to be impossible. Okay? Like, what I mean is, I don't know, doing a no-hit run in Dark Souls or something. That's a challenge. It's a different mindset. That's using difficulty as a form of reward. Again, that crazy, like, crazy guy who's always in their peak and always young forever. That's that guy. In fact, if you probably see a lot of people nowadays, when you talk about here's a healthy streamer. Like, here's a great example of a healthy person. Someone pops in and it's like, what diff is this that you're playing? And then this very influential streamer, who I've mentioned a bunch of times, his first reply is, well, I'm playing on this diff because the other diff, it doesn't offer anything that interests me. It's like, I don't want things to be hard for the sake of being hard. That's a great reflection. That's something that shows that they have more ways to be rewarded. Now, the person who asks what diff this is, they are more likely to be the person that derives from a very narrow range of rewards. Who's going to end up overall more happier, successful, productive, and influential? The person that has more options, not the person that asks. So, what's the flip side? Streamer gets on, playing highest difficulty, and then someone comes in and is like, so, how's it going? And then they're like, oh, this game's just frustratingly hard because apparently the hard difficulty it's just a bump. It's not even interesting. It's just a bump. Like, well, why are you doing it? It's like, it's the only way that matters. Non-sustainable. Just absolutely non-sustainable. So, what type... That person, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's just video games, right? This person is like, it's harmless. It's just video games. Is it though? Ask yourself, if you spend over 75%, if you spend over 75% of your time exercising a mindset, it is unrealistic and absolutely naive to think that it doesn't impact all your other decision making. So when someone tells me, oh, don't worry, I won't think like that when it comes to important decisions, Like, no, I'm gonna call your bluff there. It will probably impact your important decisions. In fact, when something a mindset that you have in an activity that consumes the vast majority of your time, you don't even process that anymore. Like, generally speaking, it almost becomes innate. Like, active participants in life are rare. They are fewer. You're trying to strive to be more like the non-coincidental people. But generally speaking, there's a lot of passive learning, passive observations, habitual compulsions that you created by exercising a mindset. It's not your fault. It's not necessarily only your fault. It's like, it's a really big complex interaction. So when you keep saying like, I can't like this game because I can't be good at it, it's like, don't worry, like, you're playing a video game. It's not a big deal. It's like, I will be different when it comes to other things. I know that's being naive. The next thing you'll know, you're gonna be toxic to your significant other because they're not good enough for you. It bleeds into everything you do. You have to write down on a list and ask yourself, what do you do the days, right? Your days, right? Break down your days. It's a lot of effort, of course. Break down your days, and the things, the behavior and activity that you do most of the time, the stuff that's associated with that is going to have the biggest influence. So if you spend most of your time on Twitch, right? Like, if you're conversing most of your time on Twitch, ask yourself, how are you conversing on Twitch? If the first thing you say is, I wish I was better, and that is like 90% of your Twitch's introduction, you gotta take a note of that. You gotta start thinking, wait, how does that perspective affect everything else I'm doing, right? And some people, I've been challenged before, and obviously I've been right and wrong. I never say I'm right or wrong and can predict the future. I'm just using statistics to deduce the likelihood. Some people would say like, oh, you can't learn that much about a person. Like, I would say, well, you can't, but you can certainly learn more than passively listening to someone. So for example, when someone says, well, why does it matter? It's just words. Like, if I say it's okay, instead of saying, oh, it's okay because I did so and so with X, Y, Z, how's that any different? But it is. It's dramatically different. You can derive so much information from someone who's willing to add more detail and someone who's being general. It's not worse or better. We're not comparing what is better or what is worse. Saying less says a lot of things. Saying a lot says a lot of things too. If you're actively looking at it, if you're actively confirming, you might be thinking, well, you're just profiling and stereotyping. It's like, yes, I am. That's what you do. You're deducing things. But am I discriminating based on it? No, I'm not. Because the moment I ask and it's not what I thought, then I know the truth. And if you're wondering, well, stereotyping is wrong because you're going to act on presumptions, you're going to assume, right? And I just used the correct word. But what most people would think is, oh, well, if you're relying on statistics and profiling and deducing, you're going to assume. But you're presuming, and then you're going to verify that. Oh, yeah, no worries. We can talk about this another time. I'm kind of like heading off after this. But yeah. What do you mean you really got to go? Like, to the bathroom? That too? Oh, okay. Okay, so you got to go, right? So we'll just hang it up here. It was pretty good chat. I just hope that something comes of it. It's hard. It's really hard. I'm not gonna tell you it's easy. I don't think it's. I mean, I gotta get ready. I have a call with some. Oh yeah, all right, cool. Oh, oh, good luck, good luck, good luck. Best of luck. I hope it turns up. Like, I know I just said don't hope for things, but you know, wishful thinking. Wishful thinking. It's not bad or good to be wishful thinking. Just do it. And yeah, you can feel free to tell me what happens after. It's all up. All right? No, there isn't. But some people might say otherwise, you know? So, it's all the above. We're not you don't have to, you know. The choices when someone says wishful thinking is bad, they're saying not wishful thinking versus wishful thinking. Both. Just have wishful thinking and pragmatism at the same time. You're a human being. Let's not be binary here. You can do all of the above. You have choices. You don't have to pick one or the other. Just saying. Anyways, that's last thing. There's only the reaction to when you don't get that's Josh, that's we'll talk about that next time, I guess, if you want. What you just said, you just did it again. You're so consistent with that type of line of thought. Anyways, it